Hello, hello. Thank you so much for joining me today. My name is Selena Pemberton, and I am so honored to be working and sharing this information with you all, how to get labor ready. And regardless if you are within your first trimester or you're thinking about having a kiddo, or even just possibility of just understanding and being more informed on what you can do and what's within your power to prepare yourself for the best day of your life, is getting labor ready. So thank you so much for joining me. I'm so excited to be here. A little bit about me. My name is Selena, and I'm an occupational therapist by background, but I have really found a passion for working with maternal health. And so right now I am offering prenatal and postpartum yoga classes as well as coaching. I work with clients privately to help them through the bump, baby, and beyond. And just really here to share information and help women feel empowered physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually in regard to this really exciting time that is having children. And so this is actually part one of a 5-week workshop. So you can see here that we're going to go over what do I need to know about labor today. During week two, we're going to have a prepare the mind for labor. Week three is going to be preparing the body. So we're going to be moving around and getting some different poses and getting into different positions to help with the physical body. Week four will be preparing the connection, not only with your baby that you're about to meet, but also with anybody that's going to be there on the day with you. So whether a partner, a doula, a friend, a family member, anybody that's going to be there helping to ensure that there's communication there on what your needs are, as well as how can they best help you during this process. And then week five is going to be application and advocacy. So putting it all together and being able to take this information and apply it to that wonderful moment that we are all working for. So let's go ahead and jump into what is labor and what do I need to know. We're going to talk a little bit about how we can redefine labor. Most of us, I'm sure, have been nervous or curious or anxious a little bit about what this process really is. And so I'm hoping to destigmatize a little bit about, destigmatize the concept of labor and what it actually can be when we reframe some of those things. We're also going to look at the anatomy involved in labor. We're going to look at terms that you should know. What are the phases of labor? And what can you do before, during, and after to ensure a calm experience for both you and baby? Please, please, please remember, you are built for this. Okay, I know that there are lots of fancy devices and fancy gadgets and certain types of things that are out there that can help you with the labor process, but just know that you are innately made for this, right? So this has been happening for as long as we can remember, as long as we've existed. And so I just want you to remember there's been millions of women before you that have been through this process, and there's going to be millions and millions more of women that are going to go through this process after. And it is just a beautiful thing. It is how we bring people to this earth. It's how we keep our generations going. And so just remember, step back, look at the bigger picture here, and know that you are already ready. You have all the tools and you have everything you need within you. And so the purpose of this program is going to help you connect to those natural instincts that you have within you, not only in your body, but in your mind, to be able to facilitate the labor that you want. Okay, so I wanted to take a moment here and just talk a little bit about what labor is. And the society has talked about labor and all of the different types of maybe fears and worries and things that people have shared with you on labor. And it is a scary thing. There's a lot that can happen during this time, but there's also a lot that you can control in what you do, right? There's so many things that you can ensure are in place so that you are having the best experience that you can have. So when you think about society's expectation and demands, they've really shifted a lot in the last 50 years. And I actually found some interesting facts here. 1 in 10 women experience their water breaking before labor. So that was surprising to me to see that because again, in society and in movies, we see the person, right? We see the pregnant woman who's out shopping and her water breaks, or she's driving in a car or having a fight with her husband and she has her water breaks, right? But actually, it's only 1 in 10 women experience this before labor. So it's kind of an interesting fact. Everyone experiences labor pains differently. So this was something also interesting that I looked in my research is that not everybody experiences pain necessarily in the belly or in the back. Sometimes they feel it in different parts of their bodies. Sometimes they have different severities of it. And when you think about pain, it is very subjective, right? We all have different thresholds for pain. So for someone, they may be able to tolerate the pain, whereas somebody else may find that even early labor is very, very uncomfortable. And so I just want you to be aware that everyone experiences things differently. And although you hear everybody's opinions and you want to know what to expect, I'm sorry, but we can't predict the future. And so I just want you to know that what you're going to experience is going to be different from what everybody else experiences. And I just wanted to add this too, because I know that there are some conversations out there about there's a high risk for C-sections and VBACs, and even inductions are very common. And so I just want you to see that there's 30 to 35% of pregnancies are often induced for whatever reason. And so when you think about the purposes of why someone's induced, that can definitely change the way labor goes. For example, it might make labor more intense just because you're taking Pitocin or some type of medication that's helping unnaturally ease it along. Or there may even be a potential risk for a C-section, which again isn't the worst thing in the world. It's not ideal if you have an option, but at the same time, I want you to think about what your medical team is recommending and or what your medical your doula, your midwife, anybody whatever they're recommending is what you do need to consider because they know what's best for you and baby. And so I just want you to know that that can be an option, and unfortunately it isn't a popular option, but it is something that many people get through, many people recover really well from, and you can still, as you see in this picture, have that immediate connection with your baby. And so the whole process of labor can seem out of your hands, right? So I just want you to think, I want you to bring it all up. If you're watching this recording or watching this live, I just want you to bring up these emotions and just let them happen. Let them be here. Let those fears and worries come to you because that is 100% normal and natural to experience those. The more we shove those emotions down, we tend to hold in a lot of tension and stress within our bodies that can affect our baby. So I want you to think about letting those go right now, maybe writing them down, writing a journal. Feel free to write them in the Facebook group. Just feel free to let them out. Once we let go of all of those nervous emotions that we're feeling with it, I want you to step back and think about what can I control in this situation, right? What can I ensure is present and available to me during this process so that I have some control over this experience for me. So here's some different things: home versus hospital, offering to have a doula or having availability of a doula trained in there, or a traditional medical team. How do you want to manage the discomfort? What are your options with that? And I also want you to think about how you're going to handle when things don't necessarily go the way you planned, when your plan A or your plan B or even your plan C didn't work out. So I want you to think about how you would handle those situations. So now that we've brought up emotions and we've let kind of them arise and come out of us, I want you to take a moment and think about what your perfect labor would look like. Maybe for some of you, this might be the first time you've ever really thought about that. I want you to take a moment. You can pause this recording if you'd like. You can go ahead and close your eyes or just sit back for a moment. And I want you to think about, what does the perfect labor, the labor of your dreams, look like? And then I want you to bring your senses into it. I want you to think about maybe who's with you. What voices do you hear? Who do you see with you? Where are you? What do you smell or taste or hear? Maybe what clothes are you wearing? How does it feel on your skin? And just think about what it would feel like to be in that process right now. What would it feel like to be in that process right now? Maybe for some of you, you might be breathing a little heavier. You might be feeling different sensations. And just let whatever come, come. There's no right or wrong. Just simply what you are hoping for in this time. And again, feel free to write this down, journal it. Think about those senses. What do you feel? What do you hear? What do you smell? What do you taste? Who's around you? Who's with you? What position even are you in? All of those things that kind of bring you to that moment when just before you get to meet your baby. A very exciting time. Good. All right, let's go ahead and keep on going here. So we are going to talk just briefly about the labor timeline. So this is a very, very brief timeline image here, but when we have the labor, we do have 3 stages that can occur. We do have the early, we have the active, and we have this transition phase. And I'll go into a little bit more detail as we go. Once we're done with that labor phase and we've gotten to the point where our uterus is contracting really strong here, our cervix has opened and dilated, we start to have the pushing and the birth time. And this is when, unfortunately, it's the shortest time of our whole experience, but it's also the most intense time. And so this is a very exciting, lots of emotions, a lot of things happen here, and everyone's so excited to meet the baby, meet your baby, especially you. And then once we get baby here, baby maybe on your chest, working on skin to skin, you're having all of these emotions happening. That is a time where you have what's called either afterbirth or second birth, which is where the placenta then has to come through the vaginal canal. And again, I'll talk a little bit more about that as we go. But that is a process where you may or may not have to push, but the medical provider will be kind of pushing around on your abdomen a little bit there to help with the final parts of what made your baby have nutrition and oxygen and all these wonderful things while he or she was in your womb. And so there's that process as well. And then once that process is done, you get to enjoy your baby, and you have now started your postpartum recovery and postpartum chapter in your life. Okay, so I thought it would be important just because I am a medical professional, I'm an occupational therapist. I also do a lot of yoga with my clients. And so it's really important to be aware of what anatomy is involved so that we understand what's going on in our body and how we can help facilitate that with certain mental practices, our breath work, and then also some of the physical positions we're in, which we'll talk a little bit later in the weeks to come. So we know our uterus is really, really important and the anatomy involved in labor. And so I have a model here. I'll show you the rest of the pelvis soon, but this is the uterus here with the fallopian tubes and the ovaries. And then you'll also see this is the vaginal canal that goes into where the baby would go through. So this organ is expanding and expanding and expanding, as you see in the picture, to fit your baby. So normally your uterus is the size of your fist. and look how large it expands. It's amazing. It's a really amazing organ. And expands to be able to hold your baby up until you are ready to deliver that baby. It is quite amazing. And so that uterus, as it is stretched and stretched and stretched, you may notice, I'm sure you've heard of Braxton Hicks. But that's where you'll start to feel a little contraction before it expands. So a lot of the times you'll feel the uterus contract a little bit before it expands, or sometimes you might feel a little cramping or menstrual cramps. That is completely normal. That's your uterus starting to expand just a little bit more every day, every month, every week to be able to fit your baby. And so this then organ starts to contract a little bit more consistently during the labor process. And that also helps dilate the cervix and be able to push the baby out. So not only are you going to use your abdominal muscles to push that baby out and really kind of getting into certain positions to push that baby out, but your uterus, that's those contractions is the uterus contracting to be able to prepare that baby to come through the vaginal canal. We have our cervix, which I'm not sure if you can see my mouse, but it's right at where the baby's head is. You can see that it is pretty thick in nature. So a lot of people say that it looks just like, those little creamers, those little coffee creamers that you'll get. That's half the size. So it's about that big and about that big around. And that is the size of your cervix. And so it's very thick and it's very, it's closed, of course. And so that has to actually thin and open to get the baby through. And that's labor. That's your early active and transitional phases of labor is that cervix opening. And you want that cervix closed during your pregnancy, right? Because you don't want baby out too early. And so in some cases, the cervix might be naturally thin or may have some dilation happening earlier. And so that would be something your doctor would talk to you about maybe getting steroids or something there to kind of keep that cervix closed and thick. And then you have the vaginal canal. Okay, and so that is the canal where the baby will come through, right? That's also where when we have sex, that's where we have penetration. And so this vaginal canal will actually open up and stretch just like it would with intercourse or any other type of penetration. Obviously, it would expand a lot more to allow a baby to come through. And so it's pretty amazing how our reproductive organs just make it happen. It's pretty amazing. So that is the uterus, the cervix, and the birth canal. I then want to talk about the perineum, the pelvis, the pelvic floor muscles, and even the hormones that are involved. So I'm going to take the little organs out of my pelvis here. So the pelvis is the white structure or the bony structure that you see here on the screen. And this is the front side. You'll see your pubic symphysis, and sometimes this can be affected during pregnancy, during labor, and even postpartum. So this is definitely something that can come out, pubic symphysis. If you hear about it, this is where it's located and is actually designed to expand to prepare for baby to go through the canal. And so sometimes that needs a little TLC after the fact. But your pelvis does many different things. My pelvis is not super flexible, but this, your pelvis in your body has all the ligaments and muscles around it that keep it stable. But sometimes when we cross our legs, when we get into certain positions, when we are leaning on towards one side more than the other, or even when we're kind of walking, right, we tend to get some rotations of our pelvis. And so if we have certain positions of our pelvis, it can cause baby to have a little bit of more difficult time to go through the labor. So when we talk about the physical aspects of labor and things that you can physically do to prepare your body, we'll talk about pelvic position because that can have a big impact on getting baby safely out. And so you'll see the front here is the pubic symphysis. These are your sitch bones. so what you sit on. And then you have your coccyx, which is back here, which is the end of your spine. So when you look at the back of the pelvis, you can see that the bottom, the farthest end of the spine actually attaches to the pelvis here. And so if any of those areas are off or in a wrong place, it can cause some difficulties with labor that may require different positioning. Okay. Everything that you see in red is the pelvic floor muscles. And it's surprising to people to realize that there are no bones that are keeping everything in: your bladder, your uterus, your rectum, your intestines, right? There's no bony structure to keep anything in. It is all muscle. And so this is where pelvic floor therapy is so important during pregnancy, but also postpartum, because this is all affected during the process. Whether you have a C-section, whether you have a vaginal birth, this is going to have an effect. And so it's really, really important to understand how you can rehab these muscles back to a nice, good strength to be able to hold everything up and hold everything in. So the pelvic floor muscles do a lot in the labor. They expand, they have to open up, they have to stretch out, but they also stabilize the pelvis, they support the organs. And so it's really, really important to make sure that you are aware of how to help your pelvic floor do what it's designed to do pre-labor, during labor, and then postpartum as well. And then our perineum here, you can see in the picture there's a circle, and then there's kind of like almost an oval circle. It's the muscles and the skin that are right between. So you can also see it right here. It is right between your vaginal opening and your anus. You will see or feel this tissue. This is your perineum. And unfortunately, sometimes this area can be torn, or the physician or doctor that you're working with may need to add a little incision here to be able to open up the vaginal pathway to get baby out. And so we'll talk a little bit about what that's called. But this is the perineum. That's when they talk about tears. And there are things that you can do to prevent tears. So if you have any questions about that, please let me know. I'm happy to go over that with you. And that may be something to prepare. We can talk about when we get into the physical part of how to prepare for labor. So the perineum is really, really important in not only being able to get stretched enough to let baby out, but then the recovery of that perineum, because that is actually where a lot of these pelvic floor muscles attach to. And so that's really, really important to be able to get that perineum back up into healthy shape. And then I wanted to add quickly the hormonal system. So your oxytocin, which your body naturally releases, helps stimulate those uterine contractions. And so that can also be provided synthetically with Pitocin. So that might be something that you may have to go through during labor to get things going along, is Pitocin, which is a synthetic oxytocin. And then we have relaxin, which you actually produce throughout your pregnancy, and it softens the ligaments and the tissues to make your pelvis more flexible for birth. So wonderful, right? But that's where you get a lot of those aches and those pains and those discomforts, especially as you grow and as you progress through your pregnancy. That relaxin is great during labor, but it can make before labor pains really difficult to manage. So again, seeing a pelvic floor therapist, doing prenatal yoga can help strengthen the muscles that are around the pelvis that will help support those ligaments. All right, so that is a pretty brief review of the anatomy involved with labor. So now let's go ahead and go into a few of the terms that you may hear during the process. So dilation and effacement, so that is directly related to your cervix. Not only does your cervix need to dilate or get larger, which is up to 10 centimeters, your cervix also has to efface, which basically means thinning out. So your dilation is measured by 0 to 10 centimeters, and your effacement is measured by a percentage. So we usually start out with 0, which is the thickest, all the way to 100, which is the thinnest. And when you are working with a midwife or a labor and delivery nurse, they will be able to assess how the cervix feels based on an internal exam. So if you hear those terms, it is directly related to your cervix. And the more those are progressed, so the higher your centimeter number and the higher your percentage, the closer you are to getting ready for birth. There are a few stages of labor here. So we have the early, active, and transition, which is the parts of labor. You have the delivery, and then you have the afterbirth. We'll go over a few more details on this in just a moment here. Pitocin, we talked a little bit about that, but that's the synthetic hormone that is provided usually via IV fluids, and it can help speed up or initiate labor. And so our body may not be either releasing it or releasing enough, or may not even be picking up the receptors of oxytocin. And so sometimes this can help get things going. You may also hear about Braxton Hicks versus contractions, true contractions. Braxton Hicks are contractions, but they are not labor readiness contractions. So it is normal to feel those. Remember how I talked about how your uterus has to contract a little bit before it expands. And so that might be where you're experiencing some of those Braxton Hicks. And if anything feels uncomfortable, please, please, please make sure you talk to your doctor, midwife about it. It's important that they're aware of what you're experiencing. We talked already about oxytocin. It kind of goes with the Pitocin, but that's your natural hormone. And it's actually, I learned a little bit more about this. It's actually in males as well. And it also aids in supporting with bonding and also helps with the lactation to prepare for breastfeeding. So oxytocin, it's interesting how both of us release it, males and females, and it really helps with that bonding into the baby. So that's just really cool. And then an episiotomy is where that perineal tissue, that tissue between the vaginal opening and your rectum or your anus, is where it tears a little bit. So they have to either provide an incision or it tears, and they have to sew you up a little bit to make sure that perineal tissue comes back together. So if you do hear that, that is definitely something to talk to your doctor about so that you have a little bit of awareness of what's going on during your labor. Okay, so let's go ahead quickly through the early stages of labor. So in this early phase, this is when your cervix begins to start softening and thin out. So that's a little bit of dilation and effacement. And so you will tend to see anywhere from 3 to 4 centimeters at this time. And it starts to thin, their cervix starts to thin out a little bit. Contractions are mild, can still be irregular, so they're not in this patterned synchronous yet, and may feel more like menstrual cramps or just kind of tightening in your belly. This phase can last from a few hours to a few days, especially for first-time moms. They may be experiencing this early labor for even a week. And so it's important that you're following up with your doctor to make sure that, you know, how things are progressing. I know for me, during my second, I was 3 centimeters for like a week, and I was like, okay, great, we're ready. And it just kind of stayed there. And so baby wasn't ready. And so, you know, although I was excited to get through the next part of the labor to meet the baby, I had to stay kind of at that early phase. So some things that you can do during that phase is definitely rest. It is probably the biggest marathon you will ever go through, and physically, mentally, emotionally. And so you want to make sure that you're resting as much as you can, conserve energy. If you are working, make sure that you are communicating with your supervisor on, you know, maybe lighter duty options or definitely some breaks throughout the day so that you can conserve some of that energy. Make sure to stay hydrated. eating light snacks, so energy boosting vegetables, hummus, protein-based snacks, not a lot of sugar, not a lot of carbs. You want to have anything that's going to help you produce that long-lasting energy. Any type of relaxation techniques, such as deep breathing, gentle stretches, we'll go over some of those in the next few weeks together, and definitely start timing your contractions. So there is a saying when it comes to the contractions, which is 5-1-1. So that means that your contractions are 5 minutes apart, lasting 1 minute in length within a 1 hour time period. So when you start to get noticing that pattern happening, that's when you're going to want to call your doctor. Okay. So labor as long as you can at home. That's just my kind of words of wisdom, because once you get to the hospital, they may actually send you home. So if you're not progressing or you're not having pretty consistent contractions or your water hasn't broke yet, they may send you back home, which can cause complications, especially if you live far away or you had to make arrangements for pets or other siblings. So just keep that in mind to try to labor as long as you can at home. But when you start to get those consistent contractions, that's when you're going to want to head in and make sure you're making, sending the alarms and making sure that everybody is aware of what's coming next. All right, so active phase, you definitely want to make sure you are heading to the hospital or birthing center or preparing for your home birth at this point. This is when your cervix is starting to dilate from between 4 to 7 centimeters. And those contractions are getting stronger, they're lasting longer, and they're getting closer together. So we're seeing anywhere between 3 to 5 minutes, you're getting that contraction. So your focus at this point is going to be on pain management, using different types of breathing techniques, birthing ball, even a warm bath or a shower could be helpful during this phase. And this also may be a time where you do want to consider an epidural or laughing gas or some of the other options that you might have there. Definitely want to lean on support. This is where it's all hands on deck to help you be as comfortable as possible, to be resilient as possible, to keep going through those contractions and getting to that next phase of labor. This typically lasts anywhere from 4 to 8 hours. And then we have that transition phase. So this is right before delivery. It is going to probably be the most intense time, but it's also the shortest amount of time, which is great. So the cervix dilates all the way from 8 to 10 centimeters. And I don't know if you've seen what 10 centimeters looks like, but it's pretty big. And your contractions are getting tense, lasting up to 90 seconds, and they're really close apart. They're really close together, I should say. And you're going to start feeling a lot more pressure, and your body is going to actually kind of want to push. Some people say that they even feel like they're having a bowel movement or they have to have a bowel movement because, again, you're feeling all of that pressure, and your rectum is right there too. So that baby is pushing on bladder, rectum, everything to continue to open up that cervix to prepare to come down the vaginal canal. So the best thing you can do is stay focused, do what the medical team is telling you to do, rely on your team, stay calm. I think that when you experience pain, naturally you try to get away from it, right? You try to push it away, you try to get away from it. But with this type of pain, you have to let come with waves, like waves of the ocean. You feel it coming on, you do what you need to do, and you let it go. And whatever you decide to do to manage your pain, there are ways within your control to help you manage that. And so those are definitely some things we'll continue to talk about here together. And then finally, it's pushing and birth time. So this is when your cervix is fully dilated and you will start to push your baby out. Your contractions are going to be less painful. However, they're going to be still powerful and as frequent. And you'll actually have the system with whoever's helping you with the birth. They'll look at the contractions, like they'll start to see the monitor go up and so you're going to push with your uterine contractions. And so you'll have about a minute or two of a rest, and then you'll go back in and push with those uterine contractions. So there's lots of different things you can do here in different positions, depending on if you had an epidural or not. There's different things that we can do to help get that baby down and crowning. And that's when we start to feel, if you didn't have an epidural, you start to feel that ring of fire, which is kind of that stretching of that opening of that vaginal area, the superficial vaginal area. And so that's very exciting because baby's head is there and baby is coming soon. This can take anywhere from 1 to 3 hours of the process of pushing. It may take a little bit longer, especially if you are a brand new mom. So follow your baby's cues and provider's instructions on when and how to push. Try different positions if you didn't have an epidural. It's all different things that you can do. And there are some policies in some hospitals that you have to be laying in the bed or have to be laying down. Have that conversation and see if there are other options like squatting positions or hands and knees positions that you can try. And then your breath and really focusing on getting the breath syncing with your contractions, and then also thinking positive affirmations as you are going through that process. So I am made to do this. The discomfort is bringing my baby. I know a big thing that my partner did when I was in this exact moment was the pain is good. The pain is bringing our baby. The pain is good. And so I had to reframe pain bad. I have to get away from it. This is awful to pain is good. Pain, baby's coming. It didn't take away the pain, but it reframed my mind's way of handling the pain. And that really did change the experience for me. And then after the baby's out, the baby will be put right onto your chest. You'll have that moment for skin to skin and be able to look at your baby, maybe identify the sex of your baby for the first time. And you'll hear cries and all of these wonderful things. And it's such a relief to get baby out and with you. And but it's not over yet. You still have the process of birthing your placenta. And so after baby's out, you may have some slight contractions that are still happening as your uterus starts to get a little bit smaller. And that takes quite a bit of time, anywhere from 2 weeks to 2 months that your uterus is contracting. And breastfeeding actually helps with bringing that uterus down. And so you're going to go ahead and focus on bonding with your baby as the provider may massage and work on getting that placenta out. And that may be uncomfortable, but you have your baby, you're happy, you're safe, everything's good. And so this is actually a picture of what the placenta will look like. I highly recommend that you take a peek at it. It's part of you. It's part of what your body created to keep your baby safe and fed and loved and warm. And it's just an amazing organ that goes out with a baby. And it's just a really cool thing. Some of you may want to encapsulate the placenta, or you may want to keep the placenta. Just have that conversation and identify what you want to do with that placenta. But if you don't want to do much with it, that's fine, but definitely take a peek at it. I highly recommend it. It will blow your mind because you are more powerful than you think. Okay, let's go ahead and breathe it in. Let it go. There's a lot of information. Might not be necessarily new information for you, but it was probably a good review of what's going on. So I just want to kind of come back to a quick summary, talk a little bit about what we talked about today, and how you can spend this next week thinking about all of these things that you may want to ask your doctor, you may want to talk to your partner about, you may want to get into place to help you have control and feel empowered during this time. So remember, every labor is unique. Every labor is different. You could probably ask any labor and delivery nurse or midwife that there is no same pregnancies. So just be mindful of that. Give yourself grace when things may not go the way that you planned. Please don't compare yourself to other moms or other experiences. This is your story and it's going to be unique. And I encourage you to embrace it because nothing else matters. Nothing else matters. Nothing else matters and it doesn't have to be perfect. Consider options for pain management, whether it be breathing, movement, visualization, or even your epidural or IV medications. Being mindful to be flexible with what the birth plan is and that it may change. And so you just have to give yourself grace and patience with that. Making sure that you have a good support team that is there with you from start to finish, that is going to be positive and supportive and preparing you for this best day of your life. That you know the signs of labor. What types of contractions are you feeling? How close are they together? How long are they lasting? What do I do when my water breaks? And then also any type of bloody show. We didn't talk too much about the bloody show. Again, everybody's a little bit different, and some people may not even experience that. But that is a good sign that if you do see that, that your body is getting ready for that labor. And then transition is tough, but temporary. So that transition, that last phase of labor is the hardest, and that's where you get to meet your baby pretty shortly. So I want to say thank you. Thank you so much for hanging in with me and learning all of these things. This is just the surface of what we're going to talk about in this workshop together. But if you have any questions, feel free to ask in the Facebook group. I'm happy to answer, explore, research with you, and get you those solutions and answers that you are looking for. And I'm here with you every step of the way. So please make sure to utilize me as a resource for you, as an advocate, as a support, as a friend, as a fellow mom. Let me help you when you feel like you need help. It's okay to ask for help. We're all in this together. Our next live call is going to be Sunday, December 8th at 7 p.m. right here on this same Zoom link. I'll go ahead and make sure to remind you. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you have any questions or anything, feel free to reach out, and I hope you all have a wonderful day.